Hi, everybody. I'm Scott,
And I'm Luke.
And I'm Jonathan.
and this is the No Way to Hollywood podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes. I haven't figured out a good thing to say in weeks.
It happens that way sometimes. But there is something that has happened within the last week, something that we have all done within the last week.
I took a shower. Yeah.
It was not
Wait.
that.
Oh,
I
it wasn't?
Were we supposed to take showers before this?
In the last week? No, in the last week. Did it happen in the last week?
I'm just kidding.
That something is that we have all watched a particular movie, and we are going to talk about that movie tonight.
And you know what movie it is because you clicked on the title of the we watched Black Widow. Okay, you know that.
Luke, we know we have so many subscribers who just first of all, we have so many subscribers. Second of all, when the episode comes out, they just press. They just
push. They don't even. And they're like, hide that
just
title. I don't want to see it. I just want to see what these guys have to say, and I just love the anticipation.
Well, we all know that they really love your titles and descriptions better than the actual podcast.
Well, hold on. I mean, they're good. I was just going to say I like them, but that was a step a little farther than I had hoped that we would go.
Oh, okay. Well, gentlemen, I had the pleasure of going with a friend to see Black Widow in the Dolby Atmos Theater at AMC. Thank you very much, AMC. And it was an experience. I'll put it that way. Jonathan?
Oh. I had the privilege of going to see Black Widow with a friend as well at AMC in the Dolby Atmos, and I can agree with you that there was an experience that was had there. It could have been anything. It could have been a blank screen for 2 hours. Still would have been an experience.
And I watched the movie on my own in my basement on my computer over the course of 3 nights because I'm a parent.
Wait, I mean, I've always found you to be relatively obvious, but are you a parent or are you a parent?
I'm transparent, and what? Yes, I have kids, and that makes it difficult to find time to watch anything. And so yeah, it took 3 nights to get through the movie. I would have gone faster, but family.
That happens.
Yep,
Okay.
it absolutely does.
So I kind of want to start off with my expectations coming into Black Widow because, as you all know, if you've listened to this podcast at all,
which you all have, thank you so much for your long-standing loyalty to this show. It's been great. We love having you.
All 3 of you, and you have undoubtedly heard me say in the past that I am not a huge comic book movie fan, and of course, this is our Marvel Universe, yada 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 movie. So
a yada 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 movie, no less. Yeah.
A yada 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 movie. Ew.
So my expectations coming into this movie were
really high.
Not great. There were certainly some things that I enjoyed in the trailers. There were certainly some potential story and character arcs that I went, okay, that might be a little interesting. But on the whole, I was kind of going, well, we'll see Scarlett Johansson kick some people's butt, and she has these cool things where she stops herself from sliding off a falling metal thing, and yeah, that's pretty much what's going to happen. So yeah, that was kind of my expectations coming into the movie. Did you guys have any specific expectations or things that you thought after watching previews?
I remember thinking, okay, like I like your transition from her walking down a hallway to the X, but not an X thing. That's kind of fun.
The widow symbol.
Yeah, but in the trailer, that was kind of cool. But like the rest of it, I was like, oh, you've got a sister now. Okay, that's it. Like that was the trailer for me. That you've got this cool a widow symbol that's kind of an X, but an hourglass, whatever, and then you have a sister, and yeah, that's gonna be some drama. That was my going in feeling.
So Luke is counting on the sister drama.
Mm-hmm. Something about that,
yeah. I am the hardest core Marvel fan in this group.
By far.
In that I've actually seen all the movies.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that I'm actually a super hardcore Marvel fan. Just in this group, I might as well be.
Yeah, because I have not seen all of the Marvel movies.
Well, I have, guys, and let me tell you, basically,
this was one of them.
Well, you're right. That's an accurate statement. I certainly enjoyed Marvel movies over the years, but I was starting to get superhero fatigue even before Endgame, and then Endgame was a really nice end to the whole thing. And I've only seen, only been a couple movies after that, TV shows and stuff. Anyway, I've been basically getting more and more uninterested in Marvel properties and stuff. Black Widow, I went and saw largely because my A-list kicked back in.
Yep.
I'd like to have my A-list work for me for movies I do want to see, like Dune.
Yep.
And so I said, Black Widow is the newest Marvel movie. It should be competent. And even though I'm not terribly excited, nor am I saying it's going to be the worst, I just, hey, here's an action movie. I haven't been in the theater in a year and a half. I'd like to go see a movie. Let's do this. And I'd actually heard that Fast 9 was just stupid. So I was like, how about I just skip that one and try this Black Widow one and see how that goes. I had heard a little bit of critical reception beforehand. So I had heard that I'd heard average, middling. I'd heard some things like, I heard some specific criticisms as well. So I went into it not sure what all I was going to think. I didn't think it was going to be the greatest things in sliced bread. I didn't think everyone was going to think it was going to be the best thing. And the trailers did almost nothing for me. I watched the trailers and said, I don't care. In fact, okay, the one thing in the trailers I was like, I kind of want to see that is the Red Guardian. They're like David Harbour's going to put on a Captain America suit, only he's Russian's Captain America. I was like, that sounds kind of funny as long as they make it funny. And they're Marvel, so they can't be serious for more than 3 seconds. So yeah, they're going to make it funny. So I was like, okay, it could be fun. And that was kind of, my expectations were, maybe it'll be good. Maybe it'll be kind of fun. I'm just curious what this is. That was all I was going with.
Okay. And to be a little more specific before we jump into our thoughts on the movie, this movie does take place before, like, Endgame that you mentioned, quite obviously.
Because she's alive. Spoiler.
Spoiler alert, Scarlett Johansson is still alive and not dead. Although, to be perfectly fair, one of my big complaints about superhero movies in general is that people don't often stay dead.
Fair.
Okay. Yeah.
If you kill Superman, let him be dead. Just saying.
Sure.
All right, gentlemen.
If any superhero is going to get that treatment, it should be Superman. He's essentially a Christ figure out of all of them. So I'm just saying. If one of them's going to get it, it should be Superman.
All right. Okay, so here we go. What did you think about the movie?
Okay, non-spoiler thoughts, just very briefly. I thought the movie was okay. I literally had to score this movie. I was given a sheet of paper to score this movie from some group called Cinema Score. Everyone in the theater had one. And I had to give it a letter grade. At the end of the movie, I was looking at it, and I was going between, it was A through F, letter grades, right? And I was like, B and C was kind of where I was like, I don't think it's it's not really anything special, but I don't know, it had some good moments. And then the movie ended and had its final credit scene and all that kind of stuff. I was like, you know what, just straight C, maybe even down to a D. Like, I'm just kind of done, And so that's where I ended up. Just general thoughts of, it was okay. It has a few moments that I think are actually decently, like, that's decent character arc. It's a decent moment. It's not a bad idea. It's some interesting ideas, but as per usual, it can't be serious for too long. Its action was actually a low point in this particular movie, especially for Marvel movies. And I would also say that this is a movie, and this is not, I've heard this already be said by a bunch of other critics, but this movie hurts by being in the MCU. Like, it needed to be a movie that was outside of the MCU to have a chance. It has too much burden of trying to do timeline setup kind of nonsense, like trying to be a Marvel movie when it's like you can be something else and still be a Marvel movie. So anyway, those are my initial non-spoiler thoughts.
Non-spoiler thoughts. I felt like the movie was very small. It felt tiny compared, I mean, especially coming off of like an Endgame, right, where there's like a billion people in this movie and it's like way too much. You know, this movie, it's like, wow, so you guys have like 5 people working on this film, you know, like on screen at any one given time, except for like in a couple places where you have a couple more people. But like by and large, this is a movie with a couple of people wandering around doing stuff by themselves. And so in that sense, it felt much more like a television movie from just a budget production standpoint. And it was fine. It was fine. There were parts where I was like, but it was fine. I think the biggest thing was that, like you were saying, Jonathan, about like this being connected to the MCU. I was like, I don't remember that character. Is that character connected? Have I seen this person before? I don't remember hearing about that. What's going on here? I don't, you know. And so it was this big unknown for me where I'm trying to like connect dots that I'm like, I don't, especially since I haven't seen all the films, but like I don't see connections here. So I'm having trouble like feeling if I should know this person or not. And that happened repeatedly with just about every character in the film, where I'm like, do I know you?
Yeah, there's definitely an element of, I mean, even I agree, for someone who hasn't seen all the other movies, of being like, well, I don't know who this character is, and I know you're introducing new characters, but yeah, it was a weird mix of, okay, here's an origin story of sorts, without it ever really being an origin story. And it's more of an origin story for the side characters than it is for Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow.
That's because those characters can be in other movies and TV shows, whereas the main character is already dead, and they treated the movie like that. Yeah. I just like to say at least one comment to you, Luke, which is, it's funny to me that you say that it's very small, it's too tiny in a sense, because I got the different feeling. I was like, this movie's way too big for what it needs to be. This movie could be a much tighter, more taunt spy thriller or like drama story, or I'm happy to have action, but the action, I think, is an easy way to show that this movie's way bigger than it needs to be, especially the final act and all that happens in that. I'm like, this movie, and I think that's part of what I mean when I say it's got the MCU problem, which is it's trying to be like, we just did Endgame, so we've got to have our own big crazy, you know, like every Marvel movie, we got to have this big crazy thing at the end that, you know, really cool and actiony. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know how you can justify that given what the story is and who the characters are. It doesn't make any sense to me to go on that scale. If you had gone tighter and smaller, I think you would have had a stronger and better film overall, and that it would have felt stronger and more appropriate.
So what do you mean by tighter and smaller? Because I think I agree with you, but I'm coming in a different direction. So what do you mean by that?
Okay. Scott, do you have any other non-spoiler thoughts? Because otherwise I'm just going to start going to spoilers.
We're kind of already on the road there, so.
All right.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
All right. A floating castle's in the sky. Like, what the crap? Like, that's just stupid. Like, I know it's Marvel. I know it's superheroes. We've had flying aircraft carriers and stuff, but you know when that stuff shows up, the Avengers, Iron Man, like characters in situations where like, yeah, okay, let's go there. Let's have fun with this, right?
Right.
Black Widow is a human spy, assassin.
Right.
Now, she can be very clever. She can play around and be so good at her job that she can play around with the big boys and have a role in that, and that's fine, right? It's just that I don't need her to go to the Red Room, right? This whole thing, and this is a thing. As the guys watch the movies, this Red Room is something that we've known about at least since Avengers 2. There's 4 Avengers movies, 5 if you want to count Civil War, and the second one, she talks about a little bit about like she was in this Red Room, she was trained to be an assassin, she had a hysterectomy, like all these kinds of things. Her backstory starts to become a little bit more fleshed out in her talking about it. Now, the thing that made it good in my mind, even just that idea, was, yeah, it makes sense to me that like the KGB, an organization that actually exists, would put you into a room, a facility in like the Arctic that they would call the Red Room, or even just downtown Moscow, they would call the Red Room, and they would just deal with people, right? Like they would train you, and they would perform surgery on you, and they do whatever they want, because that stuff can totally happen. You don't have to get to floating castle in the sky for any of that to happen. And that's part of what makes things like that actually, as much as they're sort of these bigger than life stories, are actually things that become small and ground you when you're watching movies like the Avengers, when you've got guys big and green turning into rage monsters and flying suits and robots that are throwing giant things out of the sky. Like, it's crazy. And stories like that, as crazy as they are in the grand scheme of life, are really quite small and far more grounded. And so then the character and or the whole movie starts to feel a little bit more grounded because of that. So taking those kinds of things that are grounded and then saying, actually, the Red Room is this floating castle this guy has been in since like what, the 70s or something? Look at the decor. And
somehow they launched the girls from near Earth orbit to go do a mission.
They have like these it's fine. Again, it's superhero stuff, and it's kind of cool, but it didn't need that on any level. Even just
okay, and this is where okay. So what you're saying is they had too large of set pieces. They went to too big of places. They had too many things to do in the film. Like the things that they were doing were too big for a movie about a human super spy who just happens to be super sexy and therefore and super smart, so she can get into people's heads and like manipulate them to do what she wants.
In general, I would say yes. I would also say, though, that the hard part with it as well is just that the character stuff, while I think there is some good character stuff in this movie, like there's some good setups, some good ideas, some good payoffs even, but that is not big enough, right? Like set pieces need to echo or be sort of the outpouring of the internal character stuff, right?
Right.
And it's not that this isn't the big moment or this isn't the big thing that needs to have these kinds of scenes. It's that somehow everything that should be very important and real in the story is now lessened because you went to this floating castle thing.
Right.
Like it just doesn't fit, I don't think.
Sure. So
I mean, to a certain extent though, Marvel is trying to be the fantastical, like, we're going to take you out of the real world kind of stuff. Like, even their more human on Earth characters tend to have the fantastical element. And, the floating room in the sky, did it need to be a floating room in the sky? No, it didn't. Like, there was no point to it, to be honest, other than apparently it's easier to hide. And that's the only important fact about the Red Room.
Which it wouldn't be anytime post, like, 1998 or 2005 or something. Like, by then, like, we have so much satellite imagery, and so, like, that is not, like, what is that unidentified flying object? Yeah, okay, whatever. So
to a certain extent, the story could have been a lot simpler and just been a random hideout somewhere in Siberia, and probably ended up just as good of a movie, if not better. However, it was also one of those moments where I went, okay, they actually do want me to realize that this is fantastical and in no way real.
Right, but that's where I think that Black Widow, from what I've seen in the movies that I've watched, because I don't do comic books or anything, like, she seems like she's the kind of person who actually fits in the real world and works in the real world, and therefore she is she's awesome in these aspects. And once you get to like aliens and whatever, like, who cares, right? Like, I don't know. She makes much more sense for me. Okay, drawing a parallel, she reminds me much more of a John Wick, where it's like you've got this fantastical space in the real world where you do fantastical, amazing things in the real world, but it's this special hidden door real world, right? Like a red room somewhere, right?
The car chase. Here's another example of action. Here's the thing: the car chase should have been the best sequence of the movie. The car chase is a great setup.
Which car chase are you talking?
Her and her sister are trying to get, like, she's with her sister. They fought in Budapest for no reason. Like, they fought for no reason in the apartment. Then they're getting attacked, and they're on the run. And so it's a chase sequence.
Oh, right, yeah,
and
yeah.
They
and
get the car and stuff.
Sister kicks the door out, it bounces off the light pole into the motorcycle.
There's lots of, like, there's so much stupid in all of that. Even just getting to the car chase. But let's just say, like, get to the car chase. And the thing is, like, that's the kind of sequence where you've got this larger-than-life Taskmaster character, and she's got to go toe-to-toe with that, but she's doing a car chase, which is like every spy movie, every action movie ever, right? So they can do fantastical things there. She can do crazy flips and have some gadgets and be smart and try something a little bit more larger than life, and it would feel fine and still wouldn't necessarily be not grounded. Now, I don't want to get too stuck on action as if that's like they did the action wrong and that's the movie. Like there's a lot more going on, and I think even the floating castle stuff, I think there's a lot more to do with notes, like bad notes for the story. I think there's emotional things that are missing. I think there are character beats that are missing. I think there's things that I have to feel and really be in on for it to be elevated to the point that when we're at a floating castle, I'm with you. Like, I'm like, let's go, because I'm so in on the story. And I think that's the actual issue.
Right. Okay. And just to close the thought on smallness, you go to a floating castle in the sky, and you've got 12 extras who are going to be all of your widows in the entire film, and you have a handful of, unknown mercenary dudes all wearing the same outfit, so it's probably the same 6 stunt doubles that you have, maybe only 3. And, so like this movie, like, it always feels like, where are all the people? I'm feeling like we're missing people, or we're missing scale of something. It's 2 people walking around doing something, and then there's a couple places where, like, you got a couple extra people because you had a big enough space that you could CG them in. But, like, overall, it's like your cast, your crew is tiny on this thing, and I can feel it. So that's why I think it feels small.
I have a theory on that, Luke. And I don't think it's because the cast and crew is actually small, or that even the locations and extras you see are actually small. I believe it's because the director, I think, came across, to me at least, in this particular genre and film, as amateur-ish. Not entirely. I think there are great drama scenes between 2 characters, and I think that's this director's current wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this director could not get to a place where they can handle the scale, but I don't know if they're there yet. And it even came across, and I don't know if it's the editor's fault, if it's a note, if it's the director's fault or what, but like there's even, whether it's action or even just her going to the trailer in Norway, and she looks at the trailer, and I thought to myself, she just goes to this, like, okay, we're in Norway, she's just hideout, okay. And then she's in there and she's got like a gun drawn and she's like checking the place out. And I'm like, okay, she's checking the place out because she's just paranoid, she's just checking, and there's a guy sleeping there, and then she like smiled, and it works enough. But I was thinking to myself, where is the first shot of the trailer where, like, there's a car and there's the trailer and you just see, because you don't know what this is, and her eyes glance for a second, and then you zoom in on the car real quick, and then she's thinking about something, and then you go in with her gun drawn. Now suddenly you have tension, right? You've asked a question, you have tension. What's going on? Something's not right here. Someone's here who may not, maybe shouldn't be.
That makes sense. That makes sense. The editor's job is the person looks, they see, they think. I love that from This Guy Edits. It's a great video.
And it's great. And it could have been an editor issue. It could have been that the sequence wasn't trying to be that. And, and I'm really not trying to come in here and re-edit the movie, or like everyone that did a bad job, when they probably are all better at the craft than me. But there is something about it where stuff like that, and then action at times was like, I couldn't see what was going on, or an action would happen and I would know what was going on after it happened, rather than seeing it coming and then feeling it. Like, there are these things that kept on happening where I went, this just doesn't feel up to par with the kind of filmmaking I'm used to from Marvel and from Hollywood at this scale. Right. It just feels a little amateurish. But you get to drama scenes, and I think it's solid. I think it's fine. Is it my favorite thing? No, but I think it works. I think it's effective. And so I definitely got the sense that the word amateurish came to mind, and it might just be because it might just be a misfit at the moment at this scale for this director or for this team or something like that. Not to mention the script. We can get into the script and like all of that too.
Well, that's kind of where I'd like to go next, is talking about the script itself, because there are some very good elements to this story. I think, like you guys, there's a lot of the character development stuff that I enjoyed. I enjoyed the relationships between the four main characters. Um, I loved seeing I loved the little jokes. It felt like a family because of that, at least for me. And I enjoyed, the dad character. I enjoyed the sister character. I enjoyed, Black Widow, our main character. And I wanted to like the mom character a lot more. And I mean, I don't hate her, but you know, but the big hole for me is, we're telling the story. They're telling me that the first act of this movie just went on and on and on, and then all of a sudden we're in the third act of the movie, like big finished battle sequence, and I'm like, whoa, that happened fast, and we kind of skip over a lot of this middle part of the movie, the second act.
Well, just so you know, unfortunately, it seems like you broke up a little bit, at least on my end. So I don't know if I heard all of that, but I've heard you say this before. You're saying that you felt like the first act of the movie, it felt like the first act of the movie never ended, and then suddenly you were in the third act of the movie, right?
Correct.
That's what you're saying you felt?
Basically, yes.
I don't necessarily know why that is. It could be a distinct moment where the stakes, like, where's the midpoint of this film?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because the second act is typified generally by,
Right.
I mean, there's definitely an entryway and you can figure out that structure, but most people, I think, feel the second act, in particular with the midpoint and or the Dark Night of the Soul, two parts of the act, which are basically things get worse or things change dramatically. The stakes are raised. New information comes in that changes everything. And now you're on
where
this.
did that?
Now you're going.
Where was that new information besides the character stuff?
And I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to
Right.
analyze why you
it
might have
feels
felt that way.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for me, it's kind of like first act is setting up the family, right? And then like,
Sure.
hey, it's a family thing, and then boom, we're out of that sequence, and it's relatively long. And now we've got like, where are we now? And then we've got where are we going, right? Because those are kind of the three sections for me. You've got Ohio, you've got them trotting around doing their thing as they reconnect as sisters and they do the stuff and they figure out the thing, and then it's we reconnect as a family and we go on to take on the bad guy, right? So like that for me, those are the three kind of stages of the film. I don't know if they're quite acts, but they are stages or story weeks or something.
I can definitely, I didn't feel that way when I watched it, Scott, but since you've said it and thinking about trying to analyze it, I would suggest that like a second act to me would have felt like starting with, and I don't think the movie has this, but like it seems like it should have been they get their dad character and then there's like road trip movie for a while, right? Where they don't actually get to mom like the next scene, what they do in the movie, but rather we've got to keep going through things and maybe some information's revealed and they maybe have another encounter with Taskmaster or whatever, and something else is revealed about the bad guys or what they're plotting to do, or just something more that kind of again increases the stakes, and then you find mom, and then you're in the same sequence of events of here's our quiet before the storm, and mom's here but she's not actually here, and like all this kind of stuff. So I can definitely see that structurally. I think, okay. Have you guys seen the Captain America Winter Soldier movie? Have you guys seen that one?
Yes, I did see that one. Yes.
That is arguably one of the best movies in the MCU. And it kind of has a similar vibe in the sense of it's more of a thriller and a spy movie of sorts than it is a big MCU movie.
Yep.
Even though it's got Captain America who can throw a shield and do crazy things and all that. But like even again, that's a movie where not only is the action spectacular, but the characters are really solid. The story is really solid. Where you're going, it feels like a thriller, and it does feel smaller scale, and it does get stupidly big at the end, but it feels more earned because you're more invested in the character's deal. And one of the major things in that movie is that the main character has this friend who basically comes back evil, and he has to figure out a way to help him, right? Like this thing from his past that he's trying to deal with. And this movie also has that in a sense where it's all this stuff is supposed to be her past, her family, the widows, this whole thing's supposed to be her past. But for me, if I had to do a rewrite on this movie, the first thing I would do is I would change the first scene of this entire movie to be Black Widow getting out, and the first scene is her using the bomb to kill the guy who's got her controlled, and it kills her daughter, and she uses the daughter to confirm that he's there. I would use that as the very first scene. Why? Because to me, I think that's actually the emotional core of the character that we've never known the entire time. And so I feel like you've got to get there right away, and you've got to make you feel that, and you've got to make the entire audience go, holy crap, I didn't know Black Widow really was like a cold-hearted assassin, where she would look at a kid and say, oh, yeah, done. And it's to get herself out of a situation she doesn't like. It's selfish, right? And that makes it so if you can actually feel that, and you can feel that early and then start to learn more and see where she is, and now you're struggling, you're thinking about things, so that when you do get to moments like finding out the Taskmaster is this character that she hurt, that these things are somewhat the fruits of her own decisions on some level, I think it feels stronger. But again, sorry, last comment, I'll stop. This movie wants to be like, I guess, I mean, I can use the word feminism, even though I don't necessarily know what that means. There's so many different definitions of that, but it so badly wants to be like a men abuse women, sex trafficking story, but with all these super assassins. You know, men controlling women, that's the big issue. And how is she going to fight against that? But the character herself has been set up to be that she made mistakes and she needs to own up to them somehow. And so that part of the movie was there, but it was like a side note to this other thing of save all the women, and we've been controlled and you were controlled. It's all bad. And it's not, that's not a bad thing or not a compelling arc. It's just, it feels like it's a competing arc with what the character actually needs. And so you've got this whole other thing going, which is the majority of the movie, which is like, it's not that I don't care. It's that, again, that's not as interesting or as emotional or as heart-centric or getting to the core of who that character is, as far as I can tell. Whereas this other thing where she killed this little girl to get out of the situation, that's the core of who she is. That's the problem she's trying to get out of.
Well, right. If you had a scene like in Munich with a little girl in a room with a bomb going to go off, like, holy crap, that would have been a powerful opening of the movie, right? If you do Munich, that sequence in this movie, and instead of stopping the bomb, you actually just blow the whole thing up. Like, oh my goodness, that would give you a sense. And then there's actually, yes, a journey for the character and for the audience to go on with the character saying, do I even like this character? Like, what's going on? Right? Like, that's insane that would happen, right? Especially because now you've harmed a little girl, right? So, like, that's even tied into the whole, like, females need to be protected, you know, don't abuse people, don't use them, don't hurt them, what are you doing? You know, like, this whole thing there. And, yeah, that'd be something. For me, I actually didn't care at all about the mind-controlled girls because we never saw any of the real impacts of that. We never see it.
Well, we see a girl kill herself when she doesn't want to. I think that's the moment.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. Here's another argument though. The sister character. And I think it's another issue of you don't know enough early enough.
Right.
But like there's a whole little action scene when you meet her again. She's older and she's like, she made us, and she's running down, and then she like hits her with a door and then stabs her. And you're like, okay, she's an assassin. She does assassin things fine. But the thing is, I do think there's this powerful moment where the gas goes off and she's like coming to, and you as the audience suddenly realize, oh wait, she wasn't even in her right mind.
Right.
And she just killed the person who was trying to save her and everybody else.
Yeah, sure. And I understood that, but I didn't feel it because I didn't see anything up to it. I didn't get any of that moment. It's all exposition. Like the rest of the movie, anytime that it is, I didn't want to do this, but I had to, or I'm being controlled or whatever, it's all exposition. There is like the Scarlett Johansson sequence, you know, at the very end when she's like, you don't want to hurt me and I don't want to hurt you, but I have to fight you until my sister shows up with the you know, grenade. Like, okay, but like again, that's exposition. We don't actually see any of the internal or the post whatever from it. It's just kind of like you shake it off and then you're like, oh, okay, I don't know what to do with my life now. And so there's no pain associated with it. So therefore I can't feel it because you're not showing me what has happened because of it. You're just like, I don't want to kill myself. okay. I don't know. Like, it just sits there. So then the other thing that's with this, from a writing perspective, from a story perspective, and I thought this was a very interesting observation from other writers and people who've commented. This is actually her sister's story. It's not Black Widow's story. And so therefore it's kind of disingenuous and therefore very upsetting that the Black Widow movie where we're going to get to know who she is actually a movie about her sister. And that's fine, but like, that's so you can set up a television character, not so you can send off or close out or build up the backstory of a character that you actually want to flesh out, as people have been saying, too little, too late. Well, not only is it too little, it's not the right movie because you told a different story. You didn't talk about her or her thing. And that's where I really liked the idea of people who said, why don't you just do the Budapest thing? Like, just do that movie. You know, and this has happened again and again with a lot of things, recent films, where it's like, well, you're telling this story in this movie, you're mentioning these things. Why didn't we have that film? Like, that film seems way more interesting.
Right.
And that's what I was going to say. Look, I totally agree. This movie is absolutely designed, at least if it wasn't started there, by the time they got done with it in the editing room, they were like, what we're going to do is we're going to set up this character over here.
Right.
And I think that in a sense, the director is female, and Scarlett Johansson knows that she's hanging up, you know, the widow outfit. And I think in a lot of ways, this was kind of the girls get to decide who this character is going to be. It's going to be the girl character to replace ScarJo in these movies. And then they want to make her good. So I think there's also a little bit of where it's intentional on their side too, of we want to make not just Marvel as a whole, but you know, I think in the sense ScarJo and this director and others are like, we want to make the best possible female character we can make. It's going to potentially be moving on in these movies, and you're done. So let's transition this and make the best version of a character we can. And I don't know if everyone believes that they did or not. And I think that she does a good job of acting. I think that there's fun stuff with her. I think she fits Marvel very, very well. And I think that she'll do great. But like you said, it's not just disingenuous. It's just sort of you did. It's the MCU problem that's always been there for a lot of their stuff, which is you're just setting up the next thing. And the more the whole movie feels like you're setting up the next thing, the worse that we feel about it. And it is really hard too, because while we do have Endgame and we have the end of the character, everybody knows, as far as we know, that this is the last time we'll see her. This is her swan song. So you've got, you know, I would like something that gives me because in Endgame she had this 10-minute sequence where basically she had to fight Hawkeye to kill herself.
Right.
And she died. Yep. But in this, I might have had an opportunity to know what she was always having issues with, how she resolved that, and how did she become the person who might have, again, if you start with, I killed a girl to get out of the situation because I didn't want to be there anymore. 2, I'm going to fight somebody so I can die for everybody and anybody else, right? How do you get from there to here? And it's kind of there in the overarching stuff, but really this movie could have been, let's take you through the whole story. Let's take you to how she's going to be in that mindset at that time at the end of this.
Yeah.
Right. So there were some good elements to it, but on the whole, it was certainly one of those you just missed by that much, right?
I don't even think that was a miss by that much. I mean, like you made a different movie, and so that's fine if you want to make a different movie. But that goes back to your point, Jonathan, of like, then make a movie not in the MCU. Like go make a girl power movie that only features females, and go for it. Like, that's fine. Like make a movie about girls doing girl things, and that's fine. And you can have your 3 male characters. You can have your super bad guy who likes to abuse women. You can have your super nice guy who just there is to help women. And you can have your doofus dude who just makes jokes so that the women can look smarter. Like, that's fine. If that's the movie you want to make, that's fine. But that's, you know, it's weird, right? It's just weird that that's the movie that you're making instead of here. I mean, like, because truly, like, as a Black Widow, like, her superpower is manipulating the world of men. So, like, I don't know, it seems like that'd be a more useful place to use her skills. They're talking all the time, like the powerful line, like the bad guy's powerful line. And actually, I wanted to see more of him because, like, the fact that he can, like, look into the eyes of someone and be like, oh, I know who you are. Like, that seems like a superpower that seems really interesting. Like, you know your people, you know every single one of them so intimately that, like, even when they look completely different and you haven't seen them in, you know, 2 decades, you could be like, I know exactly who you are. You can't fool me at all. That's amazing. But then also his line of like, the one thing that the world doesn't need more of, because they keep throwing them out, are all these women. And that is a massive like slap to these communities throughout history that have absolutely devalued women and have thrown them out and have killed them and all that kind of stuff, which is, horrific. And he's actually the one picking them up and saying, I'm giving you a purpose. That seems like an interesting story to like untangle, right? Like that seems fascinating. And to go the ideological things of like, how are we untangling this, right? We're taking these women who have been abandoned, these women who were whatever, and I'm turning them into something powerful, but I'm using them for my own gain. So that's kind of a problem, right? Because it is, so yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's very clear at the back. Like sure, there could have been more depth to that, and you could try to take that argument further. But really, I mean, I think it's very clear that character is very much like he thinks about women just the same as the people throwing them out. It's just that he sees a use for them,
right?
Which again is where you go to that sex trafficking thing, where I will use you as a commodity. I will get gain out of you. I don't really care about you. I think you could be thrown away too. I just see a way to make money or power or something off of you, and that was very, very clear to me. And that is despicable. But again, is that the thing that she's fighting against, really?
Right.
Is that really the Black Widow story? Is that even the sister story? Like, is that really the thing? Or is that just kind of a Harvey Weinstein happened relatively recently? And that's bad. And I mean, even the fact this is a RedLetterMedia thing that I watched a little bit of, but like really, they mentioned like, why are there more than one widow? Why isn't she just the only Black Widow? And with other assassins or whatever, but like, can she not still be special in the sense of like, she's the Black Widow? Like, they even devalue her name. They're all just widows. They're all just that. They're all in the Red Room. It's all this stuff. And it really is, it's not as good as it could have been. And it does feel like it's missing things. And there's interesting ideas. I know the first act with the kids and stuff for some people, but I do think.
Hey, Scott, welcome back. Yeah, well, and not only did it, like, I don't know if it bored me, because I thought that there were actually some pretty good tense moments in that sequence and the stuff that's going on. Yeah. I think it was not well cut, not well shot. There wasn't enough coverage or something going on between the kids. So that whole thing, just like, especially the opening sequence with like them like flipping upside down and doing stuff like that, like that whole sequence just played poorly to me. I was just like, I don't know what you guys did wrong, but like something went wrong there.
This movie begins and ends with fireflies. Can anyone tell me what that meant? What the symbolism of that
and they hold on it for a long time. I don't know.
I mean, it had to have something to do with childhood, and maybe it's something to do with how the fireflies have a particular light pattern to distinguish family, and I don't know, all this other fun stuff.
The only reason you're thinking that is because we're doing an experiment about that right now. That's the only. I literally thought about that when I was in the theater. I was like, I see experiment 12 and how much I'm having a hard time with that right now. I don't have any clue what this means for the movie. I'm just thinking about my own work I'm doing.
Okay, but with that, like, there are 3 different things that they pull from that opening scene to bookend the film, and they take all 3 of them. And even the, hey, you look upside down line, which I'm like, okay, I played with my siblings when I was a kid. I do not remember any like specific lines that we ever said to each other. And if one of them like said it to me as like, this is our moment of connection, like 20 years later, I'd be like, what? I don't understand what's going on. So that's where the writing is. You're writing something, not because it actually makes sense.
I don't think it's not possible to have those lines, but if I'm being honest, like the best ones of those that I remember are from college, which was several years ago, but it still exists. And when I'm in that friend group, and only when I'm in that friend group, do those lines have any meaning?
But not when you were 8. Yeah, college, because college is this formative, crazy time. But when you were 8, okay, whatever.
Again, another thing I like to just say is fireflies have no meaning as far as I can tell. And I know this is stupidly on the nose and cheesy, and I would probably be like, oh my gosh, really? But it would make more sense if, like, her sister got bit by a Black Widow spider.
Yes.
And it's like, how do I, like, she's almost ready to, like, run away from her sister, and her mom's like, no, you got to protect your sister. We got to take care of her. And they do take care of her. And it's like family sticks together. And then the whole thing happens. Yeah. And then it's like family does not stick together. You are on your own, little girl. Good luck to you, by the way.
Yeah.
High five. We're out. which would then be the conflict of what she wanted or was trained, and at the same time, the message she actually got, and then she kills little girls to get out of her own situation because she's got to survive, and she left her sister because she's got to survive, and now she's gonna have to figure out how to not be. You see, there's something called character arcs and like making things connect and making sure your symbols actually mean things. And so it's not that this movie doesn't have good stuff in it. It's that this movie does not have the guts to make anything mean anything.
Sure.
And I mean, yeah, like spending a long time on a shot with fireflies at the end because somebody, their mom at the beginning said bioluminescence, which I'm all for teaching kids that stuff. Like, by all means, please teach your children that. If they're 3,
we will be teaching that.
I do to my 3-year-old. It's fine. Like, it's great. So do that. But like, that's not like, that doesn't connect everything. Also, speaking of the mother and why you can't like the mother, Scott, is because she is actually a morally reprehensible, awful person who was complicit in mind controlling women and making them do awful, awful things.
Right. Of course, the whole idea was that she's a victim herself and she's stuck in that cycle.
Character.
Well, sure,
Even though at the end of the movie, she comes up with this great plan to make everything work out.
Yeah, yeah. But yes, she's totally mind controlled. That's fine. I guess she was totally mind. I don't know how totally mind controlled she was, because she wasn't.
She was mind controlled, was she?
No,
she didn't have the special mind control. The idea is it's a lot closer to Black Widow, where she, as she says, she went through the Red Room 3 times. Like, she's never lived a life outside of that world, and so she's so in, she doesn't know how to get out. Is the idea? Gotcha. She's a victim that's she's a victim that's becoming a perpetrator because of the world that she's lived in.
Right, and that's a fine theme if you want to develop that a little bit better.
Well, you have to develop it, yeah.
Right, exactly. And I'm also okay because I've seen Shawshank Redemption. Like, and you can have the lines of I've been in prison too long. I don't even know what it's like to live outside of these walls, right? And like that's actually a good theme. And you know what? They made a movie about it.
Except the whole problem is that the whole point of the first sequence of them being a family is like, they do know what it's like to try to be a family, to be outside that world at least a little bit, to do their own thing. And so, yeah, it's a role and all this stuff. There's fascinating stuff there, but that movie, that whole first sequence had more conviction for me because I know of this other show called The Americans, where it's about sleeper agents, and like that has some weight to me. So I took that and put it onto the movie, but the movie as itself, it's a good idea, but it didn't really do enough with that. It didn't really make you feel that. Like that's again, over and over, whether it's the writing or something about this whole movie just does not come together the way, as Critical Drinker would say, it's thematics. And everything goes to like the thematics of women getting abused and Harvey Weinstein-like character needs to be put down is like the thing that they're saying, rather than here's a character, here's what their issues are, let's go through that story. And by the end of it, you'll know the theme, right? Like that just doesn't feel right.
Right, and I will say, like, just one more thing about characters, like, Red Guardian, like, I really liked him at the beginning. He was really, like, that was a good dynamic where he's like, we gotta go, and then it's like, oh, crap, and then, really? And then he's like, yeah, and then it's like, sorry, and then, you're doing stuff, right? And then he's in the prison, and he's like, I'm not worried about beating anybody, and then I'm gonna, like, break your arm because I just don't even care. And then from that moment on, I was like, what happened to you? You are stupid, and it's annoying.
Well, right, because they try to neuter him so that everyone can look smarter or better, like. And I just want to say on that character, he's like the whole thing about like, I fought him in the 80s and he's like, he was on ice. You saying I'm lying? Again, I just want to mention everybody, I like the theory that Captain America at the end of Endgame goes back to not another dimension, but rather just back in time in that same place. And they all keep it on the super DL. But what if during the Cold War it's like, we got to bust out Cap. He's a little older now and he shouldn't even be known about, but a few of us know we should get him in there to do something. And Red Guardian actually did fight Captain America. And it is a thing. Nobody knows. It's such a cold secret war that only a few people know that actually happened.
And that'd be legit. I'd be okay with that. That'd be fun.
Awesome.
That'd be awesome. Well, we've certainly torn this movie apart quite well, gentlemen. And
I mean, I don't even think we worked really hard on that. It's just we're pointing out a couple things that like. Okay, so I guess here's my question, Scott, as you're mentioning that. How do you guys feel about Rotten Tomatoes currently having a critic score of 81%? And an audience score of 92% for this film?
I mean, it was fun. Like, I came out of the theater going, hey, that was fun. But if I'm going to actually give it a score, like, yeah, no, 92, 84, way too high for this movie.
That score has everything to do with going back to the movie theater. It has nothing to do with this movie, I believe. I heard people clapping in my theater. I mean, granted, I can be persnickety, I can be pretentious, I can be a film critic, I can be whatever. It may not be the movie for me. And sure, people just love Marvel movies and just love being back in that world. And that's fine. You know, you like your movie, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it very much to me felt like, hey, we're kind of back in the theater. Hey, it's a Marvel movie. I remember doing this. I'm going to clap that the pandemic's not the same way it was. I feel like that's a bigger driver than anything else. I don't think any other movie, it is the biggest box office movie.
Yep.
And it's a Marvel movie. And I think for many people, this signifies a movie version of getting back to normal.
Interesting.
Sure.
Interesting take. Okay.
I think that's a very valid point. And on that note, and because we talked about one specific movie and there's no way for us to make recommendations, I think we're going to call it a podcast, gentlemen.
Wow, thank you for dropping the recommendations.
I'm dropping the recommendations tonight.
We've also been going for a while, so yeah, thank you for hanging in here with us.
Can I just say, looking forward real quick? I'm looking forward to seeing The Green Knight at the end of this month. If you don't know about that movie, take a look at it, just in case you're curious. I'm not sure it's going to be a good movie. 50% it could be terrible, pretentious nonsense. 50% it could be cool. I don't know, but it's the most interesting thing looking this month. Just putting that out there.
FYI, after watching the preview, I'm not looking forward to that movie.
Scott's wrong. Go look at the preview. Give it a chance.
Well, maybe I'll watch the preview.
All righty. Thank you all again for joining us. We'll catch you next time.